Hey everyone, this is Marjory Wildcraft with the Grow Network, and I am so honored and delighted to have Lynette Zang as a guest. And I know a lot of you know Lynette because who doesn't know Lynette, right? And the last name is Zang, kind of like Wildcraft, right? It's memorable. Um, but for those of you that don't know, Lynette, I think one of the most interesting interviews I've ever done was when Lynette and I went through life cycles of currencies. And yes, currencies have a life cycle. And the US dollar, quite frankly, is not only an aging senior citizen on life support, but you know, it probably actually died and they're just keep they keep resuscitating it barely. So
Wow.
but Lynette's got just a wealth of experience in money and economics, um, and really understands how the system works. And so I brought her on because we are so close. We are so close, and Lynette and I are going to talk about just how close we are. And it really is the dollar collapse. Lynette, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm really happy to be here and reconnect with you because you are one of my favorite people. So thank you so much for having me, Marjorie.
Oh, I got to tell you a quick story. So my son is a powered paraglider, and he also does acrobatic paragliding. And if you're into that, which oh my God, it's really hard to be a mother of a son who's into this. Like, and he's
Sure.
actually really good. He's the best in the U.S. and ranked 17th in the world. But the if if you're into that sport, the place in the world to do that is in Turkey, and it's called Ulu Deniz, and it's because they have this like there's this 10,000-foot cliff over. I think it's either a gigantic lake or a ocean, with the winds are perfect, so they can do all their fancy aerobatics. And if they land, it's in water, which is slightly better than rock.
Hard.
Anyway, I said, "Hey Ryan, tell me about Turkey." And he says, "Well, Mom, I don't know how people are doing it because he was there. He's there now. He's about to leave. He was there about 7 or 8 months ago." And he said the US dollar to the lira was about 17 to 1. He said now it's about 32 to 1. It's about doubled. And he said, but all the prices on everything have more than doubled. So we're talking about more than 100% inflation within a 7 or an 8 month period of time. And I said, how is it working out for you? And he said, well, I'm getting a better exchange rate, but even with that, everything is more expensive. And he says, I just don't know how the local people are doing it because just 100% inflation. That's like, you think about it now, that would be everything doubling in price in a very short period of time, and that is accelerating. So this
Your
is
income,
happening.
right? Except for your income. Your income isn't doubling. The prices are doubling.
That's right. Yes, that's right. The income is actually going down. So I have a real world connection. We hear about Turkey or Greece or Venezuela or we hear about Zimbabwe. We think, that's over there. And prices here. Of course, forget the government. They're just blatantly lying about every statistic they publish, and we
Yeah.
all know inflation is not 3%, or whatever they're claiming. Um, yeah. So your take on? Let me let you riff on that. And what can I think precious metals are one of the best ways to.
Precious metals are sound money, but really what's happening, and as you said, we are at the very end of, and it's not just the US dollar, because what they're doing in other countries is valuing, like Turkey, they're valuing their currency versus the US dollar. And so it makes the dollar look so much stronger. But to your point, go to the grocery store, buy insurance, buy medical care. What, I don't care, take your pick, whatever it is that you're buying, it takes more and more dollars to buy the same goods and services. And I can tell you, at the FRED, the FRED, which is the Federal Reserve Education Department, one of my favorite websites. Anybody can go there, anybody can pull anything up that they want to. But if you go to the FRED, what you will see is that the loss of purchasing power, which is what really matters to you and me, right? What we
Mhm.
can convert these dollars into. I mean, it's on a very consistent march to zero, and the only thing that is holding it together is public confidence. And where we are right now is in a very dangerous and precarious place. And if we're looking at the different confidence levels and why they're so critical, you could recall, I mean, there isn't even one little doubt in my mind. That's when I started on my own growing, an urban farm and a bug out location now, but my urban farm, because in 2008, I knew the system died. It died. I watched it die. I was going to retire and go travel and have some fun. And all of that changed for me in that moment because I did not think that I would see this in my lifetime. And there it was, very blatant that the old system died. Life support, I mean, I think we're a zombie economy walking, honestly, because all they did was a whole lot of this. That's what they did. That's all they have. And every time they do that, the value of what's already out there declines on a very steady rate to zero. I have a whole bunch of currencies here. There's over 4,800. These are paper, right? You can, I'm not going to tear those up, but I'll tear this up, right? You can do that with this stuff because that's what it's worth. Can I tear up a gold coin, a physical gold coin? No, I cannot. I can't. And I can't do it with silver either. There's durability. There's a reason why gold is the primary currency metal. Silver is a secondary currency metal. And we are watching central banks on a global basis buy more gold than they ever have since they began recording how much gold central bankers are buying. The first quarter of 2024, so the quarter ends in March, right? They were on pace already to buy more gold this year than they did last year and the year before. So there's a reason. What do you think they might know that the public, the general public, and that confidence that the public has in this stuff? Because, hey, the dollar never goes away. Well, the name doesn't go away, but what it consists of, absolutely 100% goes away. We still have pesos, and yet we've got what I think we're on the sixth iteration of peso or fifth iteration of peso or something like that. So the confidence I really need to talk about, because in 2008, we saw bank to bank confidence collapse. In other words, banks didn't want to lend to other banks because they didn't think they were going to get the money back. So
Yeah.
that pardon?
I'm just agreeing with you. Yeah.
That bank-to-bank confidence gone. And then what did we have? We had the central bank forward guidance show where the central bank would let the banks know what they were going to do so that they could get into position to benefit from us and at the cost of the public, right? But in 2015, the Swiss, who had committed to a peg to the euro, and I can go into the reasons why if you want me to, but they had to keep that peg because if they broke that peg, a lot of bad, nasty things would happen. And what that means is when one currency is pegged to another currency like that, which we did with the Chinese yuan to build out our manufacturing infrastructure over there because it
Mhm.
was
Yeah.
much cheaper. But when you have one currency pegged to another currency, whatever their economic choices are, whatever the central banks and the governments are doing in this key country, you got to do in this key country too. And no
Right.
two economies are alike. And it was a big problem for the Swiss central bank and the Swiss economy because the European Union was at a much different pace and level. And so in 2015, January 15th, actually, of 2015, after they just came out like 2 days before, I remember watching this and saying, Oh, this peg is our highest commitment. 2 days later, bam, they broke that peg. And the reason why that's so significant, aside from what happened there, was that the Swiss central bank gave the global central bankers heads up that a central bank will do what they think is in their best interest first. And then they settled back in to this very synchronized way of moving forward up until April. And it was the Swiss bank again, while all of your advanced economies were holding their interest rates steady or raising the interest rates or what have you. The Swiss central bank was the first advanced economy to lower the rate. Now, that may not seem like that big a deal, just like there is a choice coming up for the ECB. Will they lower the rate? But none of that really matters. What actually matters is that this global central banks are no longer working with each other. It is every central banker for themselves. So
Oh
if
my
the
gosh. Yeah, I get it. They're when they it's kind of like they're feeding on each other.
exactly.
Wow.
And this
Wow.
is so huge. And I just came across an article a couple of days ago where they actually admitted that there was no longer any synchronization between the central banks.
Oh my God, that is huge because they did used to all work, and they had agreements and they had tight control and wow. So this is, kind of like the end game, like we're seeing in Hollywood. There's actors and actresses saying, "No, I'm giving my Emmy back or whatever because I don't want to be associated." Like they're bailing from the ship. Wow.
Exactly. And it's every central banker for themselves now. And
I
so,
think it's also every country for itself because
well,
David
yes,
Dubine, and I know David. He's saying that, and he just came back from this multi-country tour around the world. He's doing some research on a specific problem, but he's noticing, and he said in China, the Chinese are telling the people to go buy gold and to go buy silver. And he says they buy them like little tiny 1 gram pieces. But I'm like,
yep.
oh my God, that's a billion people. If all the Chinese population buys 1 ounce of gold, you know, or, oh my gosh, that's pretty
Now,
incredible. Yeah.
you know what's kind of interesting about that, Marjorie? In 2006, when the Chinese government allowed their population to buy gold again, those gold purchases were purchased and held through the banks.
Hmm.
So that kind of makes it pretty easy for the government should they want to do an overt confiscation, because we do know what
They
18
do that.
months in
Yep.
a row the Chinese central bank has added gold to their reserves. So it makes it very easy if a government wanted to confiscate the gold, they just take it out of the bank. The fact that they are now also encouraging them to go out and buy gold, and we're seeing this. And what actually gives me a lot of hope is that it's trickling down to the masses and the younger generation, those people in their 30s and 40s. This is huge, right? Because we're
It
seeing this, we're seeing the same behavior in South Korea and in the US, Walmart, Costco,
Costco. Yeah, I
right?
mean, my Costco, you can go to Costco and buy gold and silver. There's a kind of a funny meme going out there as they're trying to get everybody to buy gold and silver so that you'll have something to pay them with when you want to buy stuff later.
I mean, that's not so far off the probable track. Now, I have not been able to prove this next statement, so do not take me at my word for this. But I have heard rumblings that Costco has bought out the next 2 years of silver American Eagles.
I wouldn't be surprised because if you follow Bix Weir, he's talking about how they have not been producing the quantities they're legally obligated to produce, and they have not been. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
What about, and then we have this other pressure from the BRICS countries. So I saw something recently that China and Russia, 90% of the trade between those two countries is now conducted in either yuan or rubles, but they're basically cutting out the US dollar. And I kind of thought that we were going to see the end of the US. I mean, to me, the official end of the US dollar was when Saudi Arabia applied to join last August. And I think when that application becomes like official, I mean, that's the end of the petrodollar. I don't know how many weeks after that the dollar would even be viable. I don't know if it would happen that fast, but we're closing in on it.
Well, we are. And to your point, actually, yeah, I mean, we've shown the world that we will weaponize the dollar. So,
We've done it.
the loss of status as the world reserve currency really started in 99 when they instituted the euro, right? And it was,
Mhm.
and because the euro was at that point slated to take over as the world reserve currency, which obviously, did not happen. But what is bigger than that and underlying that, and this is when I think we're probably really going to see it the most, is there is a whole entirely new financial plumbing that's being put in place on a global basis. And yes, the BRICS nations are definitely a part of that, but they're certainly not the only ones, right? And I agree with you 100%. When Saudi Arabia said they want to join the BRICS, well, and do cross-border trade in their own currencies, that was the death knell has been there for a long time. And we've been watching the loss of use of the dollar in the system. But we're pretty darn arrogant. And a recent report from the Federal Reserve basically said, yeah, we don't have to keep up with anybody because we're the dollar and the dollar's never going away. But once this new plumbing is fully in place and once that is tested, I mean, I wonder how easy will it be to turn off the old system and turn on the new system?
Well, that they've been building that for a while. Do you have any idea of when they're actually going to announce that or have it functional enough? I mean, we're
They're
seeing
supposed
countries already starting in that direction in a big way. I mean, China and Russia just already agreeing and already having 90% of their trade off US dollars is huge. I mean, those are two huge populations on this planet. And then Brazil,
there.
you know, yeah.
Throw India in there because India is doing the same thing. I mean, why? I mean, if you just stop and think about it logically, why would you want to use your currency to go out and buy dollars to use
Hmm.
them to trade? I
Right.
mean, all of the central banks could just print as much currency as they want. Why do we deserve to have that? We don't. And that is shifting. And there are systems that are put in place. So if we watch the substitution fund over at the IMF, then I think that that can give us an indication of when they're ready to shift that global plumbing from the SWIFT system, which is US based and
Yeah.
dollar based, into this new system that is much more globally based. And keep in mind the IMF, so that's the International Monetary Fund. Who are their members? Every Treasury Secretary and every central bank chief, right? So these are all unelected officials, but
Right.
they get together all the time and they're sitting there and they're talking. And the IMF have what's called a substitution fund, where if you're holding dollar and dollar denominated assets, you can deposit it into that fund, and then those funds are then converted into SDR instruments, right? And the SDR is the currency of the IMF. So I think that's who's going to take over, because I've been watching this happen. All we hear about is the breakdown of the supply chain, right? Deglobalization, deglobalization, deglobalization. That's what they're talking about. But what I'm seeing happen, and that may be true in supply chains, but in the monetary system, they are coming closer and closer and closer together. And what the
Are,
IMF
yeah.
part,
Are the SDRs, which are special drawing rights, if I recall correctly,
that's
are
correct.
they just a basket of fiat currencies, or are they actually based on precious metals?
They were at one point based on precious metals, but right today they are just a basket of currencies.
Hmm.
And so what the IMF is working on is a universal currency, but they can include every currency in that basket so that the general public will not realize that there really is just one world currency with the IMF, so unelected officials that are in control of it, because it's easy to then convert it into the local currency because the currency is part of the SDR.
Got it. Yeah.
Right?
So we're seeing price increases, and I love that machine where you're spitting out dollars. It's like, can you do that for me? Yes, thank you. I need one of those.
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's even easier for them because they don't have to lift up the gun. They just push a button.
yeah, yes. Well, yeah, and it's all electronics now. Um, how close do you think we are to hyperinflation? And it seems like the US is going to be the last one to experience it. We're already seeing it, as I mentioned, Turkey, a lot of other European countries, of course, a lot of third world countries,
Mhm.
it's exploding. How far do you think we are here from the US? Because there's that classic bathtub curve everybody's seen from Weimar, Germany, and I'm certain we're somewhere near that bend. The question is when do we think we're going to hit the point where, you know, a
It
cup of
goes up.
coffee doubles in price while you're drinking it or something like that?
Well, my personal opinion is that we are already at the early stages of that. And the reason why I say that specifically is because I've been watching the M2 velocity. So the money velocity of almost all the money that's been printed, because of course they took the M3 away from us back in 2006. We don't need to know how much money they're creating.
That's right.
But since 97, taking on debt, creating more and more money was actually stimulative to the economy. But quite honestly, and again, go to the Fred and put in the M2 velocity and you'll see it for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. But since 97, it has been going down in a pervasive way. A little blip up here, a little blip up there, but it is lower today. And actually in 2013, even at that point, it was lower than it was during the Great Depression when nobody had any money, right? It was the monetary velocity was lower in 2013, let alone today, than it was during the Great Depression. So what I'd been waiting for is a pervasive turn. So a little blip, that doesn't really a trend make, but a pervasive move upward, now that caught my attention. And that's what I'm seeing. So when they're talking about this sticky inflation, I believe they have lost control. And they are between a rock and a hard place where if they keep rates higher for longer or they raise the rates, right? Well, all of this debt that needs to now be that this isn't something in the future that's happening right now.
Yeah.
All of this debt that needs to be rolled over, but was taken out at zero interest, now has to be rolled over at 5%. They could barely afford the zero. Instead of converting previous debt into lower coupon, they just took on more debt because, hey, at 0%, you can handle more debt payments, right?
Right.
But so we are hitting that debt wall right now with the monetary velocity spiking. If they do what Wall Street wants them to do, which is lower rates, all that means is more of this. And to be honest with you, much as they've been jawboning about how tight, the tightening of monetary policy because they raised rates and they're letting their balance sheet run off. Fred, my favorite site, go in and just put in the economic conditions, and you'll see that those economic conditions are as loose as they've ever been.
Yeah.
And
So
surprised that inflation is sticky. I believe they've lost control. We just don't know
so
it.
every year the US government is kind of like we have all these credit cards, and then we just get a new credit card to pay off the old credit card. It's kind of like that, which what they're doing with all these 3 months, 6 months, 10, 5-year T-bills. And it's trillions of dollars every year that they have to refinance. And that's what you're talking about. It's now higher and higher interest rates. Um, what, who is buying those treasury notes now? I mean, that's a big question. It used to be China would buy our debt and all of our other countries, but now that we're maybe not such good friends anymore, who is buying that debt now?
We're in modern monetary theory, which means the Federal Reserve, and they can do it through proxies so that it's more opaque who's buying them. But let's face it, the Federal Reserve, they are going to have to support that bond market. They don't really have much choice about it because we are at the end of it. So there might be a few countries that are buying it, but Japan, China, those countries that were big supporters. And that's the problem, right? The old hands, the banks that used to be market makers for these, all of the old entities that used to support this market has retreated. And so now what they're doing is they're putting them in money markets. They're putting them in, it's the public that's buying them through mutual funds, through ETFs, integrated here and integrated there. So shorter term buyers, if a central bank buys a treasury, do they really care if the interest rates go up or down? No, they don't really care. But a money market fund is going to care. A mutual fund is going to care. An ETF is going to care. Do they really care about the people that are buying it? No, it's risk transfer. But still, if you're looking at the performance of your fund, if you sit there and you open your 401k, it needs to look like it's either staying the same or going up, or if it has to go down, just going down a little bit. Because once you understand what's really happening, you make different choices. And then who's going to support that market, to your point?
Yeah. I mean, it was a few years, maybe a decade ago, I was looking in China, all these big countries, well, they are companies actually,
Yeah, they are.
were buying less and less and less and cutting back and cutting back and cutting back. And at that time, it wasn't that big of a deal, but the trend was there. And I think we're now at the point where they really just aren't buying much anymore. Actually,
Nope.
most of my friends there, I'm like, look, if you've got an IRA or a 401k, I said, just cash it out, get out of that system. And they're like, but I'm going to take a 20% penalty. And I'm like, it's better to take a 20% penalty than to lose everything, And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Better to get
I hope
something.
to them it makes sense. A lot of people that doesn't make sense. I don't want to pay the tax. Guess what? No matter what you do, you're going to pay the taxes. So why don't you pay it now? And if you're in a 401k or an IRA or any of those retirement products, right? What are your choices? Most of your choices are in the fiat money products, stocks,
Yeah.
bonds, ETFs, mutual funds. Even if you're doing a physical gold or silver IRA, I'm sorry, Marjory, it really is this simple. If you don't hold it, you
You
don't
don't
own
own it. That's right. There are options to convert your IRA to where you have self custody and you can actually buy precious metals and hold them.
it. It's still
That's correct.
trackable though.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's so many rules around it. I think that is a false sense of security. The
Yeah.
choice that I made personally, I had a SEP IRA. I cashed it in. I paid my taxes. I paid my penalties, and I converted it into this that I hold and I own outright.
Yeah, likewise. I did this. It was about 5 years ago. I said, "This is ridiculous. I'm getting out of this. There's no reason to have this. I want something solid. Or I want something I can hold."
That's
Yeah, so I
real.
agree. I agree with you about the traceability. Regarding debt, and this is to bring it down to individual levels. I saw a meme a little while ago, and they go, "We're winning. More people are using cash now." And I thought about that, and I said, what that means is so many people have defaulted on their credit cards. All they can do is use cash now. So I think that's an indication that not only the government is belly up, but many, 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 many people are, because
Yes.
we've just, the purchasing power has been decimated so much and prices are going up. And, people ran up the credit cards to where they couldn't run them anymore and then defaulted on. I haven't looked at the default rates, but delinquencies
Oh,
super, super high.
spiking. And when you see people using those payment plans to buy groceries, so
Ah,
you buy now and you pay later,
yeah,
that's a nightmare. I mean, you're talking about necessities. You can't live
yeah,
without food, you can't live without water. And if you have to put that on, that's why what you do is so important. And my urban farm is so important, because we need to, food becomes the single biggest issue. I mean, it does.
it really does. Yeah.
Look at it on a global basis.
Yep. I remember one time I was having this mental idea of like, why couldn't we all just stop for a few days? Like, just stop the mortgage payments and stop everything and everybody just take a break. And it occurred to me the problem would be is getting to eat because you're going to still want to eat during those days and somehow you have to provide for that. But yeah, that is, I think, the saving grace in this whole thing is that you can produce your own food, that you
Yeah.
can create community, that you can learn about herbal medicines. These things are all available to us, and they don't require that whole governmental, industrial, banking cartel system that they're. And honestly, that's what we're going back to. These systems are completely collapsing. They're really all imploding, and I just can't believe there are some people that still don't see it. I got to say, I'm a little bit torn about it because, like the global food supply is honestly just a toxic mess, and the financial system is really just like this gigantic leech. They're just leeches on everything you do. So
Oh,
that
sucking everything in. Hmm.
yeah, just about every in the medical system is really designed to kill you slowly while extracting as much money as possible. The educational system is designed to make you an idiot. I mean, every one of our transportation, every one of our systems is just not well done. And so, in some ways, I'm celebrating. Yes, it's collapsing, but it's going to hurt a lot. It's going to hurt a lot of people. And so
Yeah.
I love that what you bring forward. And really, I mean, we need a lot of things. We need community, we need food, but having sound money is definitely one of the components that's super, super important.
It's
Look,
critically important.
and so now that's what you do. You help guide people into figuring out how to transfer this account into what and what to buy and like
Mm,
the scenario of the house on your mortgage on your house. You can actually
exactly.
buy some precious metal because the precious metals they're going to look like they're increasing in price and increasing in price as the dollar loses value. Because that means your dollar is going to become worth less. And
Worthless.
worth less. It's going to be worth less and less and less. I don't think the dollar's ever going to go away. It's just going to be worth nothing. They'll still be here.
It's going to be the digital dollar. They'll keep
Right.
the name, so you think nothing has changed. I mean, you and I were there in 1971. It was the dollar
Nixon. Yep.
before August 15th. It was the dollar after that date when Nixon took us off the gold standard. If you look at those two bills, which I should do that. If you look at those two bills, they're almost identical. So, and we were told, hey, if you just buy American products, of course, we were then going to ship all of the jobs overseas. But if you just buy American products, you're not going to feel any inflation. What are you talking about? And
I
oh, by the
remember.
way, if
I
you
was a
try to
kid.
short silver, we're going to manipulate the markets. I mean, hiding in plain sight. But yes, sound money is a foundation. Community is arguably has become the biggest opportunity that we have. And it's so important because, I mean, I've been working on my urban farm since 2010. So we don't have the luxury of that time anymore to
This is
figure
true.
it out. But you figured it out, and I figured it out. These are things that we can bring to the table. And maybe somebody else, somebody will say, well, I can't afford gold, I can't afford silver. First of all, at Zang Enterprises, it is a minimum of 1 ounce. That means that if you can afford $30 for an ounce of silver. We want to democratize it. We want to make sure that everybody can buy it, right? But understand that in any form, gold and silver are monetary at its base. So if you have Aunt Bessie's old picture frame or sterling flatware, that's 92.5% pure. And it does not matter if it is bent or broken or tarnished. It just doesn't matter. And if you've got 10 carats or 14 carats or 18, there is a component of gold in there in those old high school class rings that we bought. So there are all different ways that you can accumulate based upon what you have available. I mean, this stuff, God, I bought this kind of stuff. I'd go to yard sales and buy this for nothing because they'd be like, I don't want to polish it. Okay, I'll take it. And
Yeah, I was just at the local bookstore on Sunday mornings. It's kind of like a conspiracy theorist gathering. It's kind of fun. We all hang out there. And this one woman showed up and she had 4 silver goblets that they were even etched from like 1952. They were given out as a gift for a wedding. And this woman came in and she was selling them. And I said, how much do you want for them? And she said, $100. I said, I'll take them. Because each one has about 4 or 5 ounces of silver in it. I mean, each goblet just for the melt value is
voila.
$100, so yeah, I mean, they look terrible. You're right. I went and polished them up because I'm into it. But there are still, flea markets. There are lots of ways. I'm also a big believer that if you just, you say, okay, I don't have any money, but you just open your mind and you say, look, I really want to have some silver. And, I believe everybody has, you can call it a guardian angel or a higher self or something. There's somebody with you all the time. And you know this to be true because you've had accidents or near misses and
Yeah.
thank God, Well, you can talk to that guardian angel. You say, look, I really can you help me? And then just keep your mind open and keep your eyes open and be prepared for something unusual or different. And they'll get it for you. Totally miracles. And don't ask for the whole world, but small ways. People also tell me, oh, I live in an apartment, I can't ever grow food. I'm like, look, first of all, I have a dozen ways that you could, but the most important way is to genuinely ask your inner resources and to open your mind and be available to the answer to come to you in some crazy way. It might be something on a billboard that flashes by or something that gives you this idea and then you go do it. But there always is a way to do it. So I agree with you. There's lots of ways to accumulate gold and silver that other than just going out and buying it. And then of course, if you do have those resources, you get your money out of the banks, for God's sake. All of us, there was I forget whether it was a FOMAC meeting or one of these regulatory meetings. And they do make them public, but they're kind of on those channels that nobody ever watches. So they talk pretty freely because nobody ever watches it. Well, there are people. Yeah, there people have, and I did see this one clip, and they were all these bankers in a room, and they were talking or regulators, and they were saying, the American public has more faith in the system than anybody in this room, and they all agreed on that.
FDIC meeting.
Maybe it was the FDIC, and they said. They were talking about the logistics of this because they know the banking system is going to collapse. It's not like an if.
They were laughing about it.
And they said, well, let's do it over. We're going to have to do this over a 3-day weekend. So every time we have a 3-day weekend, I'm like, is it going to happen this weekend? I don't know. But it's imminent. They know it, so.
It is. And they know it. And in that same meeting, as I know exactly the one that you're talking about, they were saying, well, we don't want the general public to know because they can't really handle it. And the corporations, well, they have attorneys, they have people here to represent them. They're the ones that really need to understand this. The public doesn't need to know.
Okay,
yeah, you do need to know. And it is the gold and the silver is the foundation. And, in my understanding now, I do feel like I have to get more politically involved at a state level to help promote sound money in the states. Because something that occurred recently, which was President Biden now shifting their stance on marijuana. And I thought about that and I went, wow, I think they raised it was is like the tier 3, the bad, like really addictive bad,
Classification. Yeah.
and they shifted it to a tier 1, right? And why did they do that? Because all the states adopted it, because there was pressure at the state level to change. That gave me so much hope. I can't even tell you, but it also helped me understand that we have to participate at the grassroots level. That we have to go in and we have to own responsibility. And so as you watch, I will be doing that more and more because I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there to the universe. And I know that, like you were just talking, I've lived a very guided life, and I just keep my mind open. And when I'm pointed in a direction, I believe what I'm told and I do what I'm supposed to do, which is to have a positive impact for a lot of people, and building the community and helping create a global sound money system for the next iteration. I mean, that's everything. If we don't have sound money, the ground is operating and it's moving underneath your feet at the whim of these central bankers and these politicians and these corporations. And that's
Yeah.
not where I don't want to be there. I'm old. It's not going to matter to me too much longer. I have plenty, but it matters to my children. It matters. And when I say my children and my grandchildren, I'm talking about everybody's.
Yeah.
That's who this fight is for. Everybody's children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. Short term, we have to come together in community to make sure that we have security in food, water, energy, security itself, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. We need security in every single one of those areas and many of the sub areas, like the medicinal gardens and all of that. Because we have to be able to think clearly. We have to be able to have the use of our bodies as long as we can. But not everybody can do everything, right?
That's
And
right.
so bringing the skills that you have, I think this is a fabulous time to learn new skills. Bringing the skills that you have to the table, to the community, you know, that's everything. All right, maybe you don't have gold and silver, but maybe you can build a house, maybe you can hoe a garden, maybe you can do that. Okay, I've got the gold and silver. Come together. You help me accomplish what I need to accomplish. For all of us, we're all coming together to work together to support each other and get through this mess. On the other
It's
side,
also, yeah, it's also a great opportunity to do something you really, really love. I don't know
yes.
what's that statistic, like 76% of people just show up to work because they
Oh,
need a
I
paycheck
can't
and they're
imagine.
disengaged. I know I couldn't ever do that. But do you have a secret desire to be a healer, an herbalist? Like, we're going to need to completely reinvent the whole medical system. you
Yes, we
know
are.
did you always love playing with water and plants and dirt? Like, there's so many things that we have to completely redo. So this is an opportunity to really redefine yourself with something that you're meant to do. I think it's just an incredible opportunity. And if nothing else, the whole COVID experience, I refuse to call it a pandemic, the COVID experience taught a lot of people that, change can happen very, very, very quickly. And I think, this is, we're going to have another, the bankers are so close to this whole thing coming apart. They're going to have to pull something out. They're talking about more pandemics and stuff, but I don't think that. I think that they're talking about that we're looking to look at World War III, or maybe they'll pull out the alien invasion, or I don't know what they're coming up with, but there's going to be something big because they're going to try and have to distract us. So there is more coming.
Oh,
Be
yeah.
proactive.
Yeah.
Change now before you're forced to change. It's a way better experience.
It is. I mean, you brought up what happened in 2020. I call it an experiment to see how far they could push people. And China took that experiment to an extreme level, and the
What did
people
they?
pushed back, right? So, I mean, I kind of view that as kind of interesting. But I remember walking through my gardens when you couldn't get food at the grocery store or toilet paper or any of that, and thinking, oh, look at me. I'm so smart because it was not an issue for me. And I had plenty that I could share. And, and this was not a problem. But then there were riots at the Capitol, which is not too far from my house, and riots in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is a very shushy kind of area. And I
Yeah,
went, aha, there is the hole in my strategy. Because
that's
while
right.
I had plenty of food, that night I slept with a gun in my bed. And I thought,
Wow. Yeah.
this is no way to live. And then that's when I went to, and it took a while to find the right place, but that's when I went and found my bug out property, which is completely off grid. Last spring, I'm excited to see what happens this year, because last spring we planted a kitchen orchard and a production orchard, maybe 150 or 200 fruit trees of
Nice.
all different kinds, right? So this is its first year, and I did 15-year trees, 10-year trees, and 7-year trees, because I wanted trees. I don't know when the full collapse is going to happen, and I'm going to have to support 40 people up there. That's what I'm preparing for. So I wanted trees that were going to, boom, produce this year immediately. That's what I was looking for. So that's what I went with, the 15-year-old trees. And everybody tried to talk me out of it. But it's like, no, I'm not putting in something that I have to wait 15 years to produce. I don't know when this is going to happen. Just do it, right? Just do it.
Well,
Early, mid,
the
late season. And so this is going to be its first spring, and I don't know what kind of production I'm going to get out of it, but it's going to be very interesting to see.
I'm going to be extra. The best time to plant a tree was a decade ago, and the second best time is right now.
It's,
So yeah, yeah. Well, Lynette,
it's
we've had a great conversation. I know we're going to have more. I'm like really looking forward to, maybe doing something monthly or something like that, because this is so crucial
it
that people
is.
have sound money and that we have community. How can
And
how can
that you
people
know
get in
how to
touch with
grow
you
food.
and how to grow food? I mean, that's every day I'm talking about that and teaching that. I have such I can't wait till our next conversations. I have such really good, interesting projects I'm working on. But how can people get in touch with you in order to, buy some silver and some gold, cash out that 401k, get out of the stock market, figure out whatever resources you have, get your money out of the banks for God's sake. That is,
Oh my God,
that
it
is
is.
so close. I mean, they've even talked about it, like they're telling us that's going to happen. If you haven't noticed the bank failures that are happening, and then they just get another bank to kind of, back in the 80s, they called it trading a dead cow for a dead horse. They use this accounting to kind of cover up the fact that all of it's completely insolvent. Um,
Yeah.
how can people get in touch with you to get started with buying some precious metals?
Well, first of all, I think we have the best phone number in the world, which is
Okay.
833 GLDZANG. So it's super easy to remember. I love that number.
Can you say it again?
Uh, I'll translate it after I spell it out, but it's 833 GLDZANG.
Lucky gold Zang. 833
Fabulous.
gold Zang.
Exactly. And it translates to 833-345-9264. But I love the name, and we love human contact. You can also find a lot of my work on YouTube and on Twitter at the same handle, at the Lynette Zang. Instagram and Facebook are at Lynette Zang. So there's lots of ways to see the work. I always give the links. I don't want you to take my word for anything. Do your own due diligence, but I'm going to make it easy for you. So just click on the links and follow them. But we are all here to be of service. And the first thing that we like to do is find out what you're trying to accomplish, because that then directs us to the kind of gold and silver, how much you need. and what you're trying to do, whether it's pay off your mortgage, make sure you can pay your property taxes, make sure you can continue to buy the goods and services that you need. So we definitely want everybody, we help them establish a goal and then execute their own personal strategy. And on the YouTube, you're going to find that I talk about the strategy a lot more because I don't have any restrictions anymore. Because wherever you are in the world, you got to have a strategy. And I think it's critically important. So I'm easy to get a hold of. I'm very active. We are, all of us, here to be of service. I have an incredible team around me, an incredible community. So I feel so blessed and so lucky to be here. And I'm here to be of service. We are all here to be of service.
Yep. And when you call her, please be sure to tell her Marjory Wildcraft sent you.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
She would have a lot. They'd get a kick out of knowing. So, all right, Lynette, this is awesome. We're going to have to do this regularly. I'm really excited about. There's so many more conversations I want to have with you about what's going on. So,
yeah, I mean, look, we are more powerful together than we are separate. Right? What
exactly.
you bring to the table, your knowledge base and your experience, what I bring to the table with my knowledge base and experience, everybody needs both of that and more.
Awesome. So 833 GLD ZANG.
You figured it already.
Yeah, go give Lynette a call or call her team. And yeah, I really just really want to encourage you to please go out and get some real money, because this thing is coming to an end. And with the way the world is so interconnected, and all of our smartphones and all of it can happen really, really, really fast. And we just don't know when. And changing things now, it takes some time. You got to close this account and get that approval and so get that process started now so you can have that done and have peace of mind. So Lynette, we will talk to you real soon. And thank you everybody for listening. I hope you got something out of it. For me, the big takeaway was that the central banks are starting to fight each other. That's huge, because they were like a school of fish. And now it looks like they're actually getting cannibalistic, and the end is near when that's happening. So
exactly, they're losing control.
They're losing it. All right, we'll talk to you later. Thanks so much, Lynette.
Thank you.
Let's see if I can figure out.